Welcome to the next lesson in this year's Climate and Nature Summit, COP28, Let's Have a Conversation. Before I start, I'd like to thank you, and in particular, I'd like to thank your teachers for bringing this lesson into your classroom. So today we are going to learn about the COP and COP28, and we are also going to talk a little bit about climate conversations. So COP28, well, what does this actually mean? So COP stands for this term, Conference of the Parties. So a conference is when people come together to discuss a certain issue. So for example, in education, we would have education conferences where teachers and other people who are interested in education come together to talk about teaching and learning. Or doctors might have a medical conference. So a conference is people coming together to discuss some topic. And the parties then, the P stands for parties, and these are the government parties. So there's government parties from around the world coming to have a conversation. And COP28, 28 stands for the fact that this is the 28th time that this conference is being held. So now we know that COP stands for Conference of the Parties. So the very first COP, or the very first Conference of the Parties, took place all the way back in 1995 in Germany, and this was called COP1. And in 1996 we had COP2, 1997 we had COP3, and so on up until last year we had COP27. I wonder if anybody can remember where COP27 was held last year, and if anybody wants to put their love to us, and teacher can pause at any time if you want to discuss any of these things. So last year, COP27 was held in Egypt. So there was one COP missed during COVID, so that's why we're slightly out 1 year. So during this time, there was a COP held every year, but some of the kind of landmark ones that stand out for me, one of them anyway, was definitely COP21. And COP21 was held in Paris in the year 2015, and I remember watching Mary Robinson after this COP, being so emotional and delighted that we had finally agreed, all countries had agreed to try to keep global warming to under 1.5. So that was a really landmark case, even though we're struggling with that 1.5 at the moment. And another really important COP that stands out for me is COP24, which took place in Poland in the year 2018. And the reason I think this one is really important because a young person, a young girl, a young woman stood up and spoke at this conference for the very first time, and it's since become a world famous climate activist and has done a lot of work in the area of activism. So I'm indeed talking about Greta Thunberg. So this COP, I think, really showed adults in the world how important the voice of children is, and that children really know about these issues and that their voice is very, very important. So now we know that there is a COP being held every year since 1995, and this year we're on to COP28. So do you know where COP28 is going to be held this year? And again, if you want to put up your hand, and teacher can pause if you would like. So this year, the COP is going to be held in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. I wonder, do you want to have a chat with your partner, your friend there, and do you know what colours are on the flag of the UAE? So the flag of the UAE looks like this. And do you know where the UAE is located? What part of the world is the UAE in? So I'm going to show you a map of the world. So here we go. And here is Ireland up here. This is us. And the UAE, so we've Ireland, the UK, so you need to go all the way across Europe, down here across North Africa, down by Saudi Arabia, and this here is where the UAE is located. It's in an area called the Middle East. So now we know what the COP stands for. C is the conference, people coming together to talk. P, who is coming together? The parties, the government parties are coming together. We know where they are coming together. They're coming together in the United Arab Emirates. So what are they going to talk about? Well, they are coming to talk together to talk about the very important topic of climate change and also climate action, actions that we can take for our climate and our environment. So I would like to show you a very short and simple animation, just very quickly to remind us exactly what climate change is.
Why is the Earth heating up? Our Earth is surrounded by a very important layer of gases called the atmosphere. The atmosphere acts like a blanket and it keeps planet Earth at the perfect temperature. However, we are adding gases to this blanket which is making the Earth warmer than it should be. But where are these extra gases coming from? They come from the burning of fossil fuels. These are fuels such as coal, oil, and gas. When we burn fossil fuels, we release a gas called carbon dioxide or CO2 into the atmosphere. This CO2 joins the blanket, making the Earth warmer. Because Earth is warmer than it should be, our climate is changing. Around the world, we are seeing more floods, droughts, storms and heat waves. We call this climate change.
So we know that burning fossil fuels is heating up our planet. So let's take a quick look at this NASA graphic that shows us just how much our planet is heating up. So what we can see from this graphic is that most of the heating has occurred in the last few decades. We know the fossil fuel industry is the main contributor to climate change, and the extraction of fossil fuels from the earth and then the burning of these fuels is our biggest problem. It is emitting too much CO2 into our atmosphere and it is slowing down climate action. So our solution seems quite clear: end the fossil fuel industry and we end the problem. And we do need to ramp down our dependence on fossil fuels and we need to do it quickly. But you may have heard of this term before, a just transition. And this is also very, very important. There are lots and lots of workers and their families dependent on the jobs in the fossil fuel industry. And these workers must be protected and they must be supported in moving into new jobs, such as all the new jobs that are coming up in the renewable technology industry. So before we move on to looking at climate actions, I would like us to take a minute just to consider how beautiful our planet is so that we understand just how important our actions are. This is planet Earth. This is home. Home to the smallest flowers and the mightiest trees. Home to the birds and the animals. From the deepest oceans to the tallest mountains and all the lakes and valleys in between. This is our common home. So now we know what the problem is and we know why it is so important that we do something about it. So let's start talking about climate action. So I want you to chat with your partner in school or as groups what you could do in your daily lives as a climate action. So what you could do at school and at home. So if you could speak about that for a minute or two and then come back to me. So I am sure that you came up with wonderful ideas of different climate actions that you can take. And when I was thinking about it, here's a couple of things that I came up with. So this is called active travel. So active travel is when we move without the use of fossil fuels, when we walk or scoot or skate or cycle to school. I thought about taking public transport, so where possible not to take my car, but to take a train or a bus if that's possible. I thought about in home and at school, turning off our lights, things that we are all getting quite good at. I thought about planting trees, and this is a very important climate action because trees breathe in carbon dioxide, so they take the carbon dioxide out of the air that's already there. So that's a really good one. And I thought about maybe not flying when I don't need to, but that is quite difficult at the moment because it's very difficult to travel very far. We need to improve train systems and so on. But these are the ones that I thought of, and I'm sure you came up with much better ones. But I am wondering, did anybody come up with something else? Because I have not mentioned the most important climate action that we can take every day. So if you would like to pause again, just to maybe think, what do you think is the most important climate action? And then come back to me. So the most important climate action that we can take is to talk about it, to talk about climate change. So I wonder, did anybody come up with that? So when we talk about something more, it becomes more a part of our lives. And also each one of us, our voice is very important, and we can teach others about climate change and we can learn from others. And people will often listen to people that they know much more than they will listen to somebody like a scientist on the news or a news reporter. So people are much more likely to listen to their friends and family about these types of topics. So when we are talking to each other, we are having a conversation if we are doing one other thing. So to have a conversation, we need to talk and we need to listen. Now, this is not just me saying that talking is important. This lady here is Professor Katharine Hayhoe. And Katharine is from Canada, and she is a world-renowned climate scientist. And a climate scientist is somebody who studies changes in the Earth's climate over time to see how it might affect our planet in the future. And Katharine Hayhoe says that the most important climate action that we can take is to talk about it. If we are going to spend time talking about climate change and having good climate conversations, then we should probably spend some time thinking about what makes a good conversation. So before we do that, I want you to watch this very short animation with Estelle, Troy and Neil, and then we'll have a chat about it.
Hey guys, how are you today? I'm good. I feel great. I just cycled to school. We should all start cycling to school together. Yeah, that's a great idea. But, yeah, because we've been learning that using our car is bad for the environment. But I don't think I can go. We really should all try to cycle to school together. I don't know, guys. I don't think my mum will let me cycle to school. But you should. We all need to start doing what's good for the environment. But the road I live on is just too dangerous. Well, I'm definitely going to start cycling tomorrow. Yeah, me too.
So what do you think? Was that a good conversation? Well, maybe it wasn't the best conversation. So at one point, I think Neil interrupted Troy, and really, no, they weren't really listening to him. He was saying that he lives on a dangerous road, and the other two children weren't really listening to that, the fact that cycling just wasn't for him at the moment. So I want you now to come up with a couple of words to describe what makes a good conversation. So we already have two things that we know we need. We need to talk and we also need to listen. But in order for it to be a good conversation, what other things must we think about? So you might want to do that as a class or chat with your partner for a minute and then come back to me. So when I was thinking about this, some of the things that I thought about that would help us to have good conversations were, I thought it's really important that we take turns, to talk and listen. I also think that it is really important to be kind in our conversations. We won't always agree with what the other person is saying, but in order for us to try and solve a massive issue like climate change, we have to remember to be kind, because we're not always going to agree. Always showing respect for the other person, again, respecting people's opinions, and even if I don't agree with them, I respectfully tell them why and I respectfully explain my opinion. And I think it's also really important to remember that it's okay to disagree with somebody. That's all right. I'm sure you came up with wonderful ideas and words to describe good conversations. And now it is your turn to have some climate conversations. So let's just recap first. There's a big conversation happening this week. Can you remember the name of it? That's right, it's the COP, or the Conference of the Parties. And can you remember where COP28 is going to be held? That's right, it's the UAE, or the United Arab Emirates. So we want to talk about our own climate conversations now, because we know how important it is to talk. So we need to think about what we will talk about and who we will talk to. So what will we talk about? Well, we will talk about climate and nature, and other things to do with the environment that we may be learning in school. It is really good to discuss our ideas with other people. So who are these other people? Well, family is always a really good place to start. So you can chat with mum or dad or grandparents or siblings and let them know what you're learning in school and what your own ideas are about climate action. School is a really great place to have climate conversations, and it's really good to discuss with your friends and with your classmates the different types of climate action that we can take, the ones that we want to take. Another really good way to talk, or a really good way to use your voice, is to talk to your local politicians. And this is a really powerful climate action because they are the people who can currently make the big decisions. So if you would like to find out a little bit more about this, we have a wonderful video on the ISSN website that was made by one of our ISSN schools, Rockbrook in Dublin, and it talks you through in a very exciting way how to take climate action by talking to your local politicians. So hopefully now you will have some of your own climate conversations, and I have no doubt that you will inspire others in your life to take climate action. So I just want to finish up by saying thank you very much for taking part in this lesson, and again to thank your teachers most sincerely for bringing this lesson into your classroom. Slán Nish.